Day is here, and hopefully you are as well. We're privileged in this case to have the lead state investigator, which is Chief Bud Elliott. Here, he kind of led the team in a direction and really took over the investigation for us after giving us some insight of what all it entailed, and we realized that we probably really just needed his assistance. So he's here to kind of present an overview of his report and his findings. Feel free to ask questions. This is a time to clear out any cobwebs that you have. We are going to have uncomfortable conversations today. I got it. We have to have those. I just ask that we respect each other. That's all I ask, okay? When Bud's done with his presentation, Vaughn and I will present or talk to, speak about the memo that the committee sent up to the fire chiefs, and when we met with the chief of Naples and our fire chief, Chief Scholl, and the committee's recommendations and kind of how we came to those recommendations and what we hope to accomplish in the future. The chief is going to come up at that point and I guess speak to what he's taken from that memo and the recommendations and what he's implemented and plans to implement in the future and where we're at and where we're headed. So take this for what it is. This is an awesome learning opportunity. I'm glad a lot of people that were on that scene are here today. I personally was not, and I look forward to learning a lot from everybody. There's been a lot of chatter out there. We know it. Today's the time to kind of clear it out and learn from Tony's experience and from the experience of everybody that was out there, and what can we do in the future. We have to be better at what we do, and we can't get there if we don't have these tough conversations. So with that, Bud, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you very much, Rob.
We'll get going.
Okay, like you said, I'm Bud Elliott. I work with the Bureau of Fire Standards and Training. I'm a field safety representative. I started with them in 2014, and this is probably the most extensive investigation I've done so far. I've done some smaller ones, some injuries. The biggest thing was nobody was a pure eyewitness to exactly the mechanism of injury. So with that, I'll start the PowerPoint. I put a PowerPoint together. It's 24 slides. They move pretty quick, and it hits the crux of the matter in the written document there. But I do encourage you to read that. There's other smaller issues that I won't touch on today. We'll hit the tops of the waves here. So, any questions before I get started? All right. So that's just the cover sheet, so we can refer to it later on. So this executive summary, and this is taken from the dispatch records and the audio records. So 1745 hours Greater Naples response to the structure fire at Curlew Avenue. It takes about 5 minutes to get there. BC1 establishes command. Within 2 minutes, ladder 1 forces a sliding door on the alpha side, which faces the road, and makes entry. Within a minute, flames are seen through the roof, and command confirms it all clear. So at that point in time, that triggers 2 in and 2 out, which is one of the issues I won't even talk about today, but it's something just to keep in mind. If there's nobody in there, we got to go 2 in and 2 out, and that's for our safety, right? Command changes to defensive mode. The signal is given to evacuate. Within a minute, all interior crews are confirmed out. Another minute, the aerial stream is deployed. We got some pictures that'll bring some life to this narrative here. After about 10 minutes, the master stream is discontinued because somebody can actually see that it's hitting the floor and not putting out very much fire. 1807, ladder 1 begins operating an 1 3/4 hose line into that slider door where they were originally. About the same time, ladder 21 crew of 2 enters alpha side unit 2, and within a minute, there's an injured firefighter from Greater Naples, which is seen on the video being taken out. And thank God this is not a death investigation, but just an injury. I'm so glad to see Tony here. All right. So pretty quick, that thing had a head start. There's no doubt about that. There were some workers in that unit, which you don't know the backdrop in unit 2. It had been damaged by a hurricane, and they had ripped out a bunch of stuff in there. The workers left that evening, probably about 4 o'clock, and they got the call about, 1750, so it had a head start. So this is what it looked like before the fire damaged it. It was built in 1971. It's a single-story flat roof, 4 units. It's plywood, gravel over tar. And that's a tough picture there, but this is taken from the BC1's video cam, what he saw just before arrival. His response time was about 5 minutes, so they got a nice response time. Okay, I'll try to use the pointer here. Rob gave me that lesson. So this is unit 2. It orders counterclockwise. Number 1 unit that way, number 2, 3 is in the back, and 4 is on the upper left-hand corner. And there's a canal back there. Those smoke conditions are pretty much around that entire structure. There's lots of hurricane windows here as well, which makes it tough to get some of the smoke out. You can see the red line going in, that's from ladder 1, and they are making entry, they're making entry into this slider door right here with the goal of trying to extinguish the fire. Well, shortly after that, you realize that's a significant amount of fire for an inch and 3/4, and they actually couldn't find the seat of the fire. At 17:53 hours, command announces it all clear. That's within 3 minutes of being on scene. He announces a change of strategy, defensive mode, signal given to evacuate, and then all crews are confirmed removed from the structure. There's another line here going to the delta side, and that's engine 1, that's an inch and 3/4 solid bore nozzle. This is the Bravo side, which will be the left-hand side of the structure. The exposure on this side over here is a CBS condominium, and it really wasn't ever in threat of being harmed by this fire. You can see on top, there's 4 of those extinguishers like that. This one is already starting to tilt and lean. That's a significant amount of smoke pushing out of the top of that roof there. And this is prior to the beginning of the aerial operation. So smoke conditions were most significant on the Alpha Delta corner. This is the backup. This is the Bravo Charlie side. To give you the full perspective. I actually went by there just about 45 minutes ago, and this structure is still not inhabitable. It's not inhabited. There's signs all over. It's a dangerous structure. So basically, nothing has been done to rehab this structure since you and the city of Naples left that thing back in February 8th of 18. This is a shot of the Delta side. This is the engine 1 crew operating right here. This is the door that was forced by ladder 21 where they went in. There's a window right here and a window right here, which goes into the living area where the entry is made by the ladder crew there. So this is a review of the ladder 1 master stream attack. It did put out some fire, but there was a significant amount of fire that it wasn't reaching. And the issue there was, of course, for Monday morning quarterbacks, it was up in the attic. It was a parallel cord truss, and it was just racing back and forth. And so there was no way to get a perfect angle with a master stream to put that entire fire out. It would just never do it by itself. And so that's 8 minutes after the arrival of the BC that the master stream goes up. They realize there's a significant amount of fire. So this video is this is ladder 1, engine 22, ladder 21 operating alpha side, unit 2 after the aerial is shut down. So remember, this is the aerial shutdown, and I didn't put the seconds on there, but I rounded it up. It was within 90 seconds that aerial stream shut down that ladder 1 began operating in that slider door with that inch and 3/4. And just momentarily after that's when the crew of 2 of the 3 from ladder 21 made entry. They forced this 36-inch right-hand in-swing door and went into what is the combined living room and kitchen of unit 2 there.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
Engine 22's crew was operating the inch and 3/4 hand line at the slider.
Yeah, now I took that narrative from the narrative that ladder 1 gave me from Naples. They said they were there too. So,
Okay.
More's better? Okay, but you guys are operating?
We were using their hand line, but they weren't there.
Okay, they may have walked away. I just took it from what they wrote, so, okay. All right, but functionally, we're talking about the same thing. There was a hose line going in there, okay. 1807 hours, two-man crew from Greater Naples makes entry into the unit. It's a 36-inch wooden entry door, approximately 8 feet to the right of that slider. So there's the slider, there's the wooden door. 1808 hours, Lieutenant from Greater Naples recognizes that a firefighter has entered the 36-inch wooden door, attempts to grab him, and the latter 21 firefighter is struck with something, as I recall, he said significant force. Right, Oti? All right. And he pulls him out. So the question was, how was the firefighter injured? And I'll back up. I use the OSHA 4-step method. It's very systematic. And the folks that I interviewed, I actually gave you questions that I typed out to guide myself so I wouldn't forget things. So there's 3 likely mechanisms of injury. So engine 1 was using that solid bore. There's a window here. Here's where Tony went in. He could have been struck by that nozzle. That would be significant force. Although at that time, we're not sure if they were operating this window or that window. Their narrative is not clear on that.
Window that was to the right of that ladder was the one they were operating.
What's that?
The window that was to the right of that ladder was the one they were operating in.
Yeah, that's me in the black uniform there. I'm with that city crew right there.
Okay.
They would not have been able to reach that truck room.
We weren't working at the corner.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Now, what I didn't explain, because it would take a lot of narrative.
And I started hearing sirens or.
Yeah, right here
Alarm going off.
is a wall that separates the living room from this bedroom. Although some of the crews were trying to bounce the water off the ceiling to hit it up there, so, but the chances that was the mechanism is remote. You can't negate it entirely because nobody saw firsthand. But I appreciate the clarification. This is potentially the second mechanism that caused the force. It's possible the firefighter was struck by a falling drywall as he entered into Unit 2. During the interview, he advised that he walked straight in a few steps, began pulling the ceiling. This mechanism is more likely than the stream from engine 1 due to the location of the windows they were operating in. And now we got the clarification that it more likely was not engine 1. Thank you. This will give you a perspective of the slider door in relation to the alpha door. This is a piece of plywood that was covered it up after the fire was out. This distance here to here is about 8 feet, and there is no obstruction because this is basically a great room. It was the kitchen, and it was the little living room. So the firefighter goes in here, it's a right-hand in swing, walks in. And like LT Taylor said, it was significant force. And there was a hose stream being operated in that slider door that potentially could have struck him in the head. Now, of course, I wasn't there. Maybe I'm sure some of y'all were. Anybody recall that he had like drywall debris on his gear and everything? Because that would be kind of a dead giveaway that something, maybe that was what had fallen on him. And of course, this picture was taken after the fire, so there was overhaul efforts there. I think that's probably more likely than the engine 1 nozzle, but less likely than the stream operating in the slider door there. Anybody have any thoughts about that right off the top?
What we were doing with our stream was, we had the pattern tightened up. We were trying to penetrate the drywall, okay, up above, start trying to, use our hose stream to, pull the ceiling down,
Yeah, for overhaul.
And it's my understanding that firefighter Loretto went in prior to Tony, but, at your face, I didn't see that, but I just had my head turned because the firefighter working with me had went, I think, to get a flashlight or something. And when I turned my head, that's when I saw Tony walk in. And just in my mind, I was like, maybe they didn't get the word. I shut my hand line down, I got up, and I literally, when I grabbed onto Tony's arm to let him know, literally, I don't know, something fell down, and then Tony was up against the wall. And of course, that's every, firefighter's nightmare, see your buddy go down.
Right.
Right. And, yeah, so.
Yeah. All right. Like I said, there was no eyewitnesses, but there's certainly some things we can take away from this. So why was the firefighter injured? It's a sequence of events, just like almost every injury investigation will ever do. There's three main pieces that I recognized from talking to all the crews. And I talked to the City of Naples crews, and I talked to many of you as well. There was some supervisory confusion, which I'll explain in just a minute. There was a failure to follow basic accountability protocol, which I'll expound on. And then a failure to utilize salvage and overhaul safety practices. And we'll talk about those individually. So first we'll address the supervisory confusion. So the order/suggestion/conversation between the Greater Naples Deputy Chief and the acting lieutenant of Ladder 21 set the events into motion. So I interviewed the City of Naples chiefs. They said that they had talked to the Deputy Chief of Greater Naples, who expressed that they needed to get in there and pull ceilings. And there's a background to this. That particular person that worked for the City of Naples had actually done pre-plans of that structure when he was a firefighter lieutenant there and knew the construction of that. So he felt very emphatic about that they needed to pull if you wanted to put that fire out. So and that conversation took place with the lieutenant with Lieutenant Engine 22, the city chiefs, and then acting Lieutenant 21. So when I talked to the Curlew 21, they explained they weren't aware the Greater Naples Fire District Deputy Chief wasn't authorized as part of the visual command staff to give what they perceived to be an order to enter and begin pulling ceilings. So you're a lieutenant, an acting lieutenant, which is, not that it's the B team, but it's different. I think we can all agree that's not your strongest point, although there's some great acting folks out there. The chief officer talks to him about this in the heat of the battle. I could see where that could be misinterpreted as an order to do that. And additional crews on scene, including the chief and deputy chief of Naples, also received the same suggestion, enter and pull ceilings. But they declined as the fire was still in a defensive mode. And City of Naples, since that was in essence a home game for them, they have a policy, offensive, defensive, and then once they call fire out, then they say salvage and overhaul can begin. They got a real systematic process, at least on paper, that they say they will follow. That had not been called yet. They had not called fire out, so they weren't ready to go into the salvage and overhaul. The second potential reason as to how he got hurt was basic accountability. Ladder 21 crew advised they didn't turn their passports into command. That could be command or a supervisor of the operations chief, just to let somebody know we're going to take some action. And then Ladder 21 failed to make contact with command of the operations chief to advise her to make an entry into Unit 2 with the purpose of pulling ceilings in order to extinguish the fire. So had they got on the radio and said, Ladder 21, make an entry, alpha side, 36-inch door, that would have given the IC an opportunity to say freeze or negative. Do we agree? Right, basic stuff, right? I just tested firefighters yesterday in Sarasota. If they don't hit that marker, they lose points. If we don't hit it, it could be really bad. This is the third piece. So, and I'll wrap up in just a second. Failure to utilize salvage and overhaul safety practices. The entry crew of Greater Naples advised during their reviews they both walked straight in, Unit 2 standing upright. Well, there's nothing necessarily wrong with walking straight in, standing upright, except for the fact you just had a mattress stream flowing for almost 10 minutes. They shut it down. Within 60 to 90 seconds, there's crews committed inside here. If that water's not shin deep, it's got to be somewhere. And it's above our heads. It's a flat roof. It's not running off. It's collecting somewhere. We've already seen the roof is compromised with the air conditioners falling in. So we got to be compromised. We got to be cognizant of what do we achieve by doing this entry. So based on the given situation, entry crew should have opened the ceiling from just outside the door and delayed entry until it's deemed safe. So the concept from Fire Academy is you start from a safe position, which could be outside the front door. You pull the pin, you pull until you work your way in. That would have possibly given that soaked drywall a chance to drop in front of him, if that was the mechanism. And at this point, we're not 100% sure exactly what it was. We do know he received some kind of force to the head. So how could this injury have been prevented? Make certain all officers and fire personnel are cognizant of the potential to confuse a crew with orders and suggestions that are not approved by the incident commander. Follow basic accountability protocols, confirming with the incident commander the order the inner structure regardless of mode. TAC Team 1, enter in the structure, basic fire school stuff that we do. And that gives the IC a chance to throw up the flag and say, stop, we're not doing this, we're not ready there, we're not there yet. And the other is utilize the safety practice consistent with salvage and overhaul. So start from the outside, pull the ceiling, and that may prevent it. A little aside, I'm at the Rotary Club of South Fort Myers. One of my best friends there runs fire service, and I talked to him about this incident without names. I said, you know, we feel hesitant to pull ceilings sometimes because we're doing damage. And things have changed now. If there's a little bit of water up above the drywall, if there's a little bit of smoke up there, that whole lid, he calls it, is coming down. They're gonna replace the insulation and the drywall, tape it and paint it, and they're in and out. So our hesitancy to do damage when they're just gonna come behind and drop the ceiling could cause us to be injured. Just something to put in your quiver there. This is what it looks like as of January 2019 according to the property appraiser. I just drove by today. Nobody's living there. It looks like there's been no work done. So just to bring it full circle. So if the conversation suggestion had never occurred, I find it highly unlikely that the acting lieutenant would commit his crew into that unit only 90 seconds after the aerial device had been shut down. Even if the timing was okay, he didn't radio to let command know he was going in. Had he done that, and the commander wasn't ready, didn't feel comfortable, he could have said, no, we're not doing that yet. We haven't transitioned. Even if the conditions were good, and the timing wasn't poor, had he pulled the pin at the front door, that would have given him a fighting chance to have that drywall drop in front as opposed to over top or behind it. Something to think about is, in hindsight, we know this structure has been unoccupied now for, 17 months roughly. We get into that mode and we gotta get in there, we gotta put this thing out. Well, if there's no life hazard in there, and we're the only thing living in there, we gotta make really, really sure it's a big old stack of benefit that we're gonna risk this human for there. And I feel pretty emphatic about that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Questions? Anybody? Okay.
Okay, well, I thank you for your time.
Thanks, bud.
Okay.
Okay, what I encourage everybody to do, there's a lot of great information in here, and Chief Elliott only kind of skimmed, gave the executive summary, if you will, of his findings. We can't walk away from this thing with just that. We have to look into this and make changes as an organization. And the safety committee or the safety review team understood the importance of that, of taking what Chief Elliott put in here and making recommendations for moving forward. So Vaughn and I will brief real quick. You have a copy of the memo that was sent to the fire chief. The safety committee, determined that there were some problems, and one of them was the failure of the incident command system as a whole. And that there has to be work done on that. So, Vaughn, you want to hit the recommendations that we submitted to the chief?
Yeah. So some of the recommendations, you guys have it on the paper.
Chief, can you clarify one? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You said failure of the incident command system as a whole. In my opinion, the incident command system is working just fine.
Okay.
Up until an order was, or a suggestion was given.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Can you clarify what you mean?
Yeah, so in out of fairness, it didn't start as a failure. I think it failed at some point, in my opinion, based on Chief Elliott's report. There was a failure of the incident command system at some point. Not saying it started that way.
Understood.
So stand corrected on that.
So there was 6 policies that we asked that be implemented. I believe some of them have been implemented already, correct?
Yeah, the chief will provide no review on the actions
Okay.
taken.
We asked to have a countywide playbook. And now this pertains to what's going on now with the closest unit battalions running calls in different districts now. and we still don't have this playbook in place. The city doesn't know what we do, we don't know what they do, we don't know what North does, everybody does something different. Blue card training for all active and company officers. Having a medic unit at all structure fire responses was another one, and I don't know where that went yet. SOG on hot wash and after action. I know a lot of the battalion chiefs have been doing a good job at that lately when we've been running calls. And there was some confusion on air horn, utilizing the air horn for an evacuation. So we need to get a policy out on that, because some people think it's still 3 short hits. One person thinks it's a long blast until the air horn's depleted. Also, it has to have a radio communication behind it somewhere. TAC channels, they need to be off scan. We still have some radios that are on scan that don't come off of scan. So that's still an issue we're having 17 months later. And the last one was multi-company, multi-jurisdiction training on low-frequency training. And we've done that a few times down in the city and in our district.
Yep. So that's the committee's kind of big picture recommendations to the fire chief's office of both the city and Greater Naples. Based on the report, the committee had the report and was able to read through it and watch a lot of videos and communicate directly with Chief Elliott and to make those recommendations. So we supplied that to the chiefs. We had a recommended time frame in there for implementation. But again, that's up to the chiefs of each organization to determine what's appropriate and how we move forward. But there's a lot of lessons learned in this thing across the board. And we can pull so much great information out of the chief's report and make changes in our organization. And some of us have to look internally and make those changes personally, you know, on how we react and respond and do things so that we don't become part of the problem. And hopefully there'll be some good internal reflection on that in the right areas. Chief, you want to talk to implementations? And
One more thing, guys, when we get a fire that's multi-apparatus responded to calls, when the first due company officer or the battalion does the original report, there's additional reports that we need to be doing as engine companies, because we had to go back and talk to everybody to have them put their information in and what they did, because the company officer doesn't know what everybody did. JT didn't know what the other lieutenants did, and that helped us tremendously when we went and did the final review on this report, reading everybody's narratives and what each apparatus did. So I noticed on a lot of fire reports, even when we go out of district, it's just one officer doing a narrative. But we need to make sure every officer on every truck hits additional narrative and fills out what they did with their crew, even if it was just standing by. That helps us if something does happen. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to look at some notes. I cross-reference a bunch of information to try and give you a good picture of what's going on. The first thing is, down on, when they talk about a countywide playbook and joint understanding of procedures, I'm gonna take it back to about, I think it was July of last year. After this incident, I went to the Collier County Fire Chiefs Association and asked them for the need to set standardized guidelines, operational guidelines, and they're throughout as a result of this incident and moving forward to get everybody on the same page. So in doing some research, there were about 20 different procedural type things that were out there, some formally adopted, some less formally, but they all needed to be reviewed, updated, and reaffirmed by the Fire Chiefs Association. As of today, the Fire Chiefs Association has not adopted any of those. Reaffirmed those, let me rephrase that, reaffirmed those. In July, I proposed that to give, it's a pretty large project, and I said 6 months, January 1. I thought that was a reasonable amount of time. January 1 came and went, and there had not been a consensus among the fire chiefs of those. So fast forward to about 2 months ago, still had not made that I'm sorry, 1 month ago, they still had not come to a consensus on that. There actually is a meeting today where they're going to try again to build a consensus on those. I will tell you, I sent Chief Martin to that meeting, and I told him that I, as a fire chief, cannot support adopting any one of those in the current form, because I didn't feel they've been vetted thoroughly enough. Some things I had found in there that I wasn't comfortable with. So the good or the bad of that is that that's where that big project is. Now, the other thing that we had done at about the first of the year, I'm like, hey, we've got to move on this. So many of these, we said, you know what, we're going to take those countywide procedures and just put them into our system, get them going, and then when the fire chiefs reaffirm that, make any tweaks, we would adjust accordingly, if that makes sense to you. So we've taken a lot of those and implemented those, and when you look, as you see them, some of those have already come out, you will see, for example, it could say standardized hose lays. In front of it, in print, it says countywide. Kind of put that there so you know that's one of those countywide procedures, all right? So that gives you a little update on that. The other piece is there's some talk about some communications, and I'll make a broad brush on that. Chief Sapp chairs the communications committee. Much of the challenges we are experiencing, when I say we, all of the agencies in Collier County, on the communications, obviously I think everybody knows we cannot drive that. We can only have a voice to try and push that along. Through this whole P25 compliance issue, there's a reprogram of radios. We have been trying to get that addressed. As of today, the county still has not put us in a position to totally switch over with the new radio programming. All right, so understand that. We have made the commitment in our district to purchase the equipment, to get that equipment so we can actually do the reprogramming ourselves, which is not something that we want to encourage because they want everybody doing it together to make sure it's 100%. So I know Chief Sapp is working on that to gather that equipment that we have to pay for, because the reprogramming effort now is, what's the cost associated with that?
We bought one set at about $2,000, and we had 2 more sets coming from the county. They released it. Once they released it, they found a fault in it. They've recalled all of it.
So we have to upgrade some radios, and so we are pushing along on that as quickly as we can. But again, that is a Collier County /SO mandate or driven project. Yes, sir.
And that cost is merely the
Hang on a second.
programming cables. The cost to program the radios themselves is going to be considerably more.
Yes. Yeah, we know to upgrade the Ochapi radios is $20,000. We know that. That's a separate piece. Yeah, but
Is the inability to lock the radio part of the programming?
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, and certain channels and how you access them and all that. And again, Chief Sapp knows that in much greater detail, but that effort, trust me, we are all as frustrated on that as anybody.
And I appreciate that this fire started this conversation and brought this to light that there is an issue. What about radio communications contributed to this incident? Like, what did you see as a factor contributed to the injury, aside from lack of radio communications? But when we're talking about countywide playbook, standing operating guidelines, and radio communications, and all those things as one, what did the committee see that contributed to the injury by lack of standard operating guidelines? I'm asking the committee, I guess, initially. I'm just while we're on the topic, before we get too far ahead, because this came as a suggestion, which I'm glad it opens the window to an issue we may have. But my question is, what lack of standard countywide guidelines contributed to the injury?
Well, there are no county guidelines
I understand.
to start.
Okay, so what contributed to the injury?
On the communication side, that was just another factor in the whole incident. Wasn't the factor of the injury, it was the factor of the whole incident.
Okay, So as a whole, we saw this incident as a whole, not just a finite injury, as a whole, we need better practice. So that's why it opened up that thing.
You know, we have some crews, when you listen on the radio, they'll say they're interior one on alpha side. Some other ones will say, no, just use ladder 21, make an entry.
Right, okay, so
Well,
common
we gotta
language.
come up with a common
Okay.
terminology,
All right. So that's
because
just
those are two different things.
Overall from the whole incident, not the finite injury.
the whole incident.
Okay, got it.
One of the byproducts of that communications piece, the physical piece about that, as you know, several months ago, we implemented new radio call signs specifically primarily, I shouldn't say, for the chief officer, staff support people. So one of the things we recognized was, as we have grown so much, our radio call signs were even confusing out there. So that was one of the reasons that you now hear the chiefs with the 3-digit numbers. So you can say, oh, 3-digit, we know it's not somebody out in the field. And of course, we took that to the county, as part of this process, we took that to the county chiefs, and they didn't formally adopt it, but now Marco's doing it, North Collier's doing it, everybody is transitioning to that, I call it the 3-digit identifier system. So that was a direct byproduct of this effort. Kind of forgot about that, to be honest with you. So let me, because Chief Lowe asked me to kind of go through some of the things that are out there, and I'm going to kind of cross-reference here, if I could. So bear with me. There was a discussion about incident command, and so what we've done is those countywide procedures that were out there in some form or fashion, we wanted to see how much. If we have something existing, doesn't match that, is there a need to just blow it up, change it, or whatever? So in looking at that, there was about incident command system. There was a recommendation for that. Well, we have an existing incident command policy, or procedure, if you will, back from 2016. So that was in place. It's very similar to what is out there with the county. The next area was response, placement, and company function. And looking at that and some documents that Chief Lowe had provided to me, we looked and see what we have out there. And some of these, so the things that I think kind of fall into that area, if you will, because there's a lot in there. There was one of the things that we did do directly after that was implement the command staff officer response, because we said, hey, we recognize the ICS process, freelancing, communication, we have to do a better job at that. So that's when we implemented that process about command staff officers or battalion chiefs that are out there that, I'll use the word, and it's not a bad word, self-dispatch, appear, show up, that kind of thing. So that was put out there. The fireground size up, that was implemented. Staging and placement, implemented. Well, let me be fair. Either they're implemented or they're in the process. We're going through the union, wherever they're at. Staging and placement. The response matrix. We revisited the types of resources and how many are going to incidents, because I thought that was an important piece. And vehicle operations responses, I read through that, it's 301.3. That's been in place since 15, which has some components in there as well that help with that command process. There was safety. And in safety, there was an existing, and it falls under safety, personnel accountability system was existing. Rapid intervention team was existing. And of course, in which really applies largely in part to safety, SCBA use, inspections, and care and all that, was in July of 2016, we adopted the state safety program, which if you look at that and read it and utilize that as a tool, gives you a lot of policy that helps us out there in the fireground. So the next area was protective clothing requirements and SCBA. Another one, we have an existing SCBA policy from August of 2015, so it's out there. What I did see, and there's some bits and pieces about protective clothing, that's something that has not been emphasized. We need to develop that one. I realize that. We have some specific to some hazmat incidents, some other things, but we don't have a global policy on that. You can go back and cherry pick and find different pieces, but that's something I think that we still need to to work on. The communications I touched on, ICS vesting, wrote a new procedure on that and purchased all new ICF vests, placed them on the 2 battalion chiefs, division chiefs' vehicles, so they're out there. 2? 3. 2 battalion chiefs and the division chief, yes. So that was in place out there. The hot wash. I saw we had some existing documentation through the county chiefs, but really was it there or not? So we wrote a new one that includes post-incident analysis, which includes hot wash. And of course, as you know, many of you know, that the battalion chiefs have been pretty darn consistently, as far as I'm concerned, conducting hot washes after most incidents that don't need to go all the way to a post-incident analysis. And I've witnessed several of those. Air horn, emergency evacuation, we have an existing policy since 2015. And that does delineate the process and radio communications and the blasts on the air horn. The interagency training, much like Mr. Palmentier had mentioned, we said at staff we need to do a better job utilizing that interagency training, and I think everybody can say that's not a written document, but since then the training folks have made a significant effort, and as you all know, that ourselves, City of Naples and City of Marco Island are training very consistently together. Now, we have opened that up. Chief Lowe has opened that up to North Collier and Immokalee. We haven't seen their willingness to for whatever reason, to join us on that in large part. But the City of Naples and the City of Marco Island, we have been training, I use the word consistently, but much more than we had in the past. And we need to continue with that, and I know that's one of Chief Lowe's efforts. Now let me switch over. Well, the playbook, I think, goes back, in my mind, there's so much of this countywide effort, and I'm hoping today they're going to make some headway on that. The blue card training, we have not adopted blue card training. Chief Lowe and I have talked about it, not a lot. Not that I'm against it at all. If we do that, it's another certification and a cost to that, which is, I'm not throwing that out as a reason not to do it, but I think there are many things we can do internally as well, or locally, to do that type of training. So we have talked about that. As far as the event, to have a Collier County EMS unit on the scene, we have brought this up numerous times to the county fire chiefs and in exercise discussion. And of course, the current protocol is you can request them, they will come, but ultimately they make the decision whether they're going to stay there and commit or leave. Yes, sir.
At the recent operations committee meeting, we were reviewing incident typing and responses to various incidents. And with EMS in the room, they have committed that they will send a medic unit to any working fire, not a reported fire, but once we arrive on scene and it is an actual fire, the medic unit will be part of, hopefully part of the dispatch going forward. But it's always available anytime, but they're not willing to put them in a smell of smoke, possible fire, anything like that. But when you have a working incident, they will send a unit without a problem.
Hang on, where was it? Talked about the hot wash after action. I think I addressed that. In fact, I just yesterday approved a form to use for that. And that does include hot wash as well. The air horn, we talked about that I hit that. The tactical channel piece, don't disagree. That's back on the communications piece. And then the multi-company operations. That, I think, and that page are all of the, not all operational in nature, but I asked Chief Martin for that. That's a list of all of the current policies, procedures that are either, well, from there down are under development of additional things as well. So I just asked for that. Be happy to answer any questions. I think that kind of at least describes to you where we have with some of the
when we had fires, we pull lines put fires out. I always felt that one of the most valuable learning tools over the years was that maybe the next shift, the shift afterwards, that the crews that were on that fire would get together, and that was the time for all the Monday morning quarterbacks to come out. And you better show up with a thick skin, because you knew something was gonna be wrong. But there was always a lesson to be learned in those meetings. And it's kind of like you had to leave your ego at the front door and go in and take your lumps, you know? But over a period of doing several of those, you would always walk out of there with something. And I always felt like every time that we did one of those, you know, there's different people taking away different things, but over a period of time, I always felt that that was one of the most valuable things that we did. I think in those after actions, sometimes we learn just as much as if we were on the training ground and training. And if, you know, I know we're big and we're busy and everything else, but if we could try to get back to those things that we know work, and they work well, I think that would go a long way.
Well, and I personally think, you know, the advantage of doing those hot, whether it's a tailbore hot wash, you know, and then you have your full after action, you know, what you're discussing is, I think, somewhere in between that, like, hey, next shift, let's sit around the table and dig into this.
Well, we put, get the chalkboard out, draw the scene out, who was where, okay, why'd you do this? I mean, the questions came out.
Sure.
You know, the thought process was questioned, and rightfully so. And there was, to me, that was a great learning experience.
I don't disagree, and in fact, the quick story on that is, I think it was a staff meeting just Monday. Somebody had reported that there was a bread and butter structure fire over the weekend, and one of the battalion chiefs pulled the crews together after and did an after action on it. That's great, but I think we need that check sheet, if you will, because you fill that out and it helps you bring out those points. You know, it kind of gives the battalion or whomever's going to be doing that, the things that we need to talk about consistently to make sure we're hitting those benchmarks. So I agree 100%. And the few hot washes that I've observed, I know specifically that got a couple battalion chiefs that seen that, and if I'm out there, I see them, they're doing it every time. And, you know, kind of just walk over to hear the tenor of what's going on. And I think they're having those discussions that exactly, I hear stuff like, everything go okay? Anybody have problems? Everybody get the hoods changed out? Anything we can do better? You know, those types of things. And I think if you can do that, you check your emotion at the door pretty quickly, you know? But people have to understand that we're not attacking, we're just talking about it while the information's fresh.
We've got a working incident on Lennox Drive right now. And it's on some pretty heavy smoke show.
Okay. Any other questions for me? We are going to push along on these. I gave, in my mind, very clear direction to Chief Martin several months ago that when I thought the county stuff would come together more quickly, that we have to push on this, and all of the section chiefs we're all given the direction, you must participate in this now, because we can't sit around and wait for what may or may not happen. But I will tell you that all the things that we have put together, implemented, or developing now, we are utilizing those countywide documents, but I cannot sit around and wait for that.
But if I could say something, Chief, with the closest unit battalions right now and not having a countywide policy, we're gonna run into something similar again until we get one. Because everybody's working off a different page. The battalions from the city don't know what our crews do. They don't know what our trucks are, what our hoses are. We don't know what their stuff is. They're calling, trying to figure out, hey, I'm on a call in your district, what do we do? And I can see a similar incident happening without having these policies at least in place. Or maybe have an operations meeting with all the battalions and operations chiefs that, hey, this is our game plan until we get these policies. But I can see this getting ready to happen again. I mean, it's just out there. If we don't have a policy,
When you say a policy on what?
just a standard operating guidelines for
What?
everything we do, because they have different guidelines than we do.
Right.
So they're gonna try to
Generally.
do it, they're gonna try to do it tactically their way, but ours might be different. It's just a suggestion that we might need to bring all the ops guys together.
They did that.
We're working on that right now, and part of that's being presented right now while we're here, and we understand that. And when this was first proposed by agencies outside of ours to release the boundaries on the battalion chiefs as the operations chief, chairman, I said, this is gonna come with some ripples that we're gonna have to iron out. But in the meantime, the ideal, remember, the ideal is to have somebody there that can assume that incident command role and start to bring order to chaos. Because if you don't have somebody at least there dictating what units do what and starting accountability and safety and everything else, then it turns into a freelancing event. So if we do nothing else but at least have a battalion chief or command officer there to start and initiate the control of units coming in, that's still a big leap forward. Now, as far as tactics, yeah, there's gonna be variations in tactics, but again, remember, their main focus there is not to tell you how to go breach the door. It's to tell you to breach the door for rescue or ventilation or
Right.
whatever it is. But, and you as a company officer or anyone else, you have to decide how you're gonna do that and report back to command. Command is merely there to help manage the incident and get you the resources you need, bring control to chaos with as far as people just showing up and start freelancing. So that's the starting point. Once we get that established, and we're working through the SOGs, but as we can approve the SOG here, and take it to the chief's level and get it approved. But it's up to that individual agency to go back home and say, I'm gonna stick to what we agreed to and not go back and reformat it differently from what everybody agreed to. And that's an uphill battle, and it's been that way for years. We're making strides, but it's still small. But remember, don't get hung up on just another battalion chief coming to your scene. It's still someone to start that management of the incident with resources to get you either what you have, slow down what they don't need, and number one is get that accountability started. That's critical. Get that accountability to know who's there and what's going on, and a focal point for everything to come to. They're not gonna run up, they should not run up and tell you how to operate your nozzle inside the structure. That's company officer level work. Their job is at the 30,000 foot level back there, the overall incident, and do I have enough resources to do the job? Do I need more? Do I need less? And then our job coming in as chief officers is the 50,000 foot level. All right, I've got the incident. How's the incident going? How's the rest of our district going? How's the rest of the county looking? So just don't get hung up on closest BC.
Vaughn, and I probably should have done this before. I'm gonna kind of look down through this list of all of, and I use the word, the countywide procedures that are out there, all right? That we have done or are working on. Many of these are operational in nature, all right? Both the mass casualty plan, all right? That one, making sure everybody in the county is on the same. And we've developed that. The area command, okay, now, that one, and we revamped, we have one for apparatus movement zone coverage. That one I don't think is out yet, but we updated that one, as many of you know. We've asked that the battalion chiefs, that we try and, I don't say do it better, enhance our zone coverage. So we're trying to keep the battalion chiefs spread out a little bit more wide. Because of that closest unit response, it kind of gives us a better option that, hey, we've got a battalion down in the south end, so if there's a fire, we'll have a Greater Naples person there, that piece of it. So that's why that procedure was changed. the countywide rehab, which does address having a unit there. Of course, ultimately, they have the final say in that. This one's out, staging, countywide staging. So when vehicles are showing up on scene, who's going where and how he's staging and preparing. All right, thermal imaging cameras. Those, I'm looking for the county ones. Well, fire shelter deployment, not for this, but the countywide. Our policy that we have existing, we literally changed a couple lines in it, and it's just like everybody else would use in the county now. The zone coverage we talked about. Personnel accountability system, we have language for that, but we found a county-wide document, so we put that one into the system. High-rise operations, that one is under development. That one's got a lot of work to do, but there is a county document out there that nobody really uses. Lost or trapped firefighter, we have language for that, but let's make sure we're on target with what everybody else is doing, or they're on target with us. And then we found a county-wide self-contained breathing apparatus policy, which isn't any different than ours, really, but let's make sure it's all the same and put that county-wide in front of it. Energized electrical emergencies was another one that surfaced as we're looking at it. And there's a whole nother handful that we haven't gotten to yet. All right? So I don't know if that helps you a little bit with getting in that playbook. It's all those pieces that we need to make sure we're on the same page. Yes, sir.
Vaughn, for at our level, I know we have been speaking with the other PCs. Short of, I haven't seen any of these policies that he's discussing from operations. So, for me, short of the ones that we've implemented through Target Solutions, but any of the countywide policies I've not seen. So the battalion chiefs have been discussing, hey, with each other, similar to certain things of how they can self-dispatch their units. Some of our people are not. We've been going down this road. When we had one ladder truck, how it's going. Our ladder truck is going before ladder 48 all the way out to Everglades or Corkscrew or whatever it is. Hey, cancel that off because it's never going to make it. You know, those things we've been kind of doing here, you know, at our level, but we only have so much time and we only work every third day. They have 3 BCs at North. We have 2. City has 1, Marco's got 1, but to get us all together for breakfast or anything like that, or even on a phone conference for 30 minutes a day is challenging. Yeah, any day of the week. So we're trying.
So 2 points on that is that everybody is welcome to attend any GDC meeting, all right? Which the labor representative is Lieutenant Josh Grimm, and now he has been consistently attending during 2019, January, February. President Nelms got him on board. So he is the one consistent person that has been showing up from representing labor. And then I have given the directions, as I said before, to those command staff officers. If you're not busy, if you're not in conflict, get there. So we've been consistently having a majority of the section managers there attending. Battalion chiefs are always welcome to attend those meetings, just like everybody else. And that kind of just gives you a flavor on that. So I will tell you that President Nelms is doing a great job trying to get some folks from labor to come to those meetings and help produce those things. I think the last meeting last month, I think we vetted through about at least a dozen different policies. And Josh was all good, you know, in many of those. So, and the ones that he feels need to go back, I guess they come back over to the labor side for review.
Kind of off point, but a statement I want to make as part of the investigation team. And I hope we saw it here today. I know Chief Lowe kind of mentioned we might have some conflict in conversation because early in the investigation, there's a lot of talk about discipline and who did what right or who did what wrong. But no, with the Health and Safety Committee, and this, I know it had an investigation on it, which was kind of put some people awry. Nowhere in there, and all we wanted to clarify more on what you said, Chief Captain, we looked at this as an incident for the fire safety or the health and safety as a whole, and then because it had a significant, you know, injury, we took people off to the side to investigate it as a whole. So where communications was a part of it, we looked at the whole process of what, first off, we had to look at, can we prevent this injury from happening? what are some factors that could have led up to it or could not have, and if we could or couldn't prevent it. But then on top of that, anything else that we saw that probably had zero relevance to the injury, uniforms, different things that happened, some conversations that happened that wouldn't have mattered if they happened or not. But anyways, the point I'm making is I hope that after the end of this, especially with as grand as it was, and having to call in, help from outside, because this was our first big one, in the future, people aren't afraid if they might be, or everybody is as willing or more willing to talk when we have somebody, even though it's an investigation. No recommendations have ever been made to the chief for any sort of discipline or any sort of anything for anybody, because that's not our place. Our place is to make it, find the cause, find it to be, if it's health or safety, and try to make it better. So I just hope moving forward that, the more we do these things, like you said, on the company officer level, the more candid people can be with stuff and break junk or don't junk it, that thick skin. But, so it's irrelevant to the conversation we're just having, I just wanted to make it before we went on, that I just thought it needed to be stated. So moving forward, I hope we still have good participation.
I do have a thought as well, so I attended 2 meetings, and it became pretty clear that this was quite a bit for the safety committee. You guys work full-time, you got very challenging jobs, and you got an off-duty life as well. But one of the complexities was this agency was gonna be questioning those chiefs from the city of Naples, and politically, that puts you in an uncomfortable situation, especially if it's a firefighter from the safety committee, or this chief or deputy chief, question these chiefs. So when I offered, because I really don't have a dog in the hunt, other than just to make sure you guys go home at the end of the day, I was really proud to do that for y'all. Really proud to see that Tony's here. And another thought, we go to these structure fires like this, one of our jobs is to try to return those homeowners to normalcy. But when we leave, they're not even close to being normal. When we get into that zone where we think we're gonna fix this thing, we're gonna go in there, we're gonna risk our lives for this structure or their contents, which largely is gonna be hauled out into the dumpster. And if we hurt somebody significantly or in their career or kill them, we gotta ask ourselves, do we bring them back to normal? At the risk of what? I know it's hard to hear. And a defensive fire still counts. If you kept it to the box, you didn't get to side Alpha or Charlie, and in my book, that counts, right? Y'all agree? Yeah, I know it's tough because we want to stop it at the origin. But that got a big head start right there, and that was a challenging fire, just because it was in the center of the structure. And I think largely, without the injury, things went pretty well. They weren't perfect, they never will be, like LT Taylor's talking about. I never went to a perfect fire in 30 years, it just doesn't happen, because it's a dynamic situation. But so I just want to bring that up, so that's all I got. Well, thank you.
Yeah, Chief, Brian, Bud.
Yeah.
And Brian, thank you all for doing this stuff. I wasn't there. Thanks for putting this on today. Going back to why we're here as Greater Naples, we all come from different backgrounds, dialects, training, experience, education, just different groups. A lot of the policies Chief was saying was 2015. That was before a lot of us even started. Some of us in this room with Greater Naples. So, it goes back to the, life safety initiatives. Number 1, right, it's culture. So it's up to us to make Greater Naples what we are and stop worrying about the past and use things like today to help build the future, because we are the future of this agency, all of us in this room. So if we don't take this to the next step and make it better for the next time, there's just gonna be another statistic, right? So we all have a responsibility in this room to each other and to the people out there to do this and make this better. So
I would like
thank
to
you all for doing it.
reiterate what Chief Trent just said. A lot of us have different backgrounds. I was a person that's had years of different policies, whatever we work with. What the committee's done is focus that we have to develop what's going to work here for us, that we're doing the same thing regardless of where we came from, who we belong to in the past. We're 100% with that. Has to happen.
Anything else for the chiefs and the committee? We're good?
All right, just a couple of additional things that I want to share with you folks is one, we did invite the city of Naples to attend today. They declined that invitation. We felt it was important that they be here. It was their fire in their city that we participated in. I'm not going to speculate as to why. They're just simply not here, but that invitation was put out there. The other thing, and I shared this, I believe it's still on Calendar Wiz this way, but just so everybody in this room knows, we recorded this today. So Captain Cadet was the videographer for this. The intent is not to leave this message in the room, but to spread it out there to everybody in our agency. So after the initial contact with Chief Elliott and Palmatier and everybody getting on, and the chief, and getting on board to understand the importance of the message that's here and the documentation that supports this, everyone agreed that this would be posted on Target Solutions as an activity for those who cannot attend to watch. So over the next day or two, that should be active on there. It's just gonna be a little time getting the video over. But we are going to get it there. So that's going to be out there. So please share that with your folks. It'll pop up as an assignment. So as long as you're tracking your Target Solutions, you'll see it. And it's just a resource. It'll have all the documents that you received here today. Please don't let conversations stop today. If you have to have bad or uncomfortable conversations, have them. We need more of those in the fire service as a whole, not just Greater Naples. And I think Chief Trent spoke very well to that. Is we have to continue to grow forward, or to grow and move forward, and decide what Greater Naples actually is. In training, we weren't involved in this incident at all, except in the post-incident, and then really from the training section, it was me with the committee. We are here to assist. If there's anything that we can do to help you, grow from lessons learned on this, we will help guide that and or provide resources for that. That's what we do. If you just want a meeting of some of the players who are there because you just got to air some frustrations out, use us as a facilitator. Captain Cadet is great at that. If you've ever dealt with him on the CISM stuff, he's like our psychologist. So he can facilitate those very well and keep us from killing each other. So just reach out to him on that. Captain.
Just, I know you talked about there could be uncomfortable conversations today, and as somebody that was directly involved and affected by this, the fact that we're having this conversation a year and 4 months later, whatever it is, 3 months later, hot washes and after actions and things like that are incredibly cathartic. I mean, this incident affected some of us in ways that I may not find out for a couple of years.
Agreed.
The fact that it took this long is relatively inexcusable.
Yep, agreed. And I think the safety committee agrees on that. I'm not going to speak on their behalf, but that was some discussion that we had, is that we have to be better at getting this out and getting this, understanding that the Chief Elliott had some time constraints that he had to go through, but once his report was out, I agree. And I think I haven't heard anybody that has disagreed with the conversation on that. Completely agree. Any other questions, comments? The good thing about it is Tony's here today. He made it through, and we talked this morning in training, and we posed the question, if Tony wasn't injured, would we even have talked about this fire? We all know the answer to that, so thank goodness we have some dialogue going. We have to have that kind of stuff. So, Vaughn, you got anything?
No, I just want to reiterate what everybody else said. This is our department. We got to make it the way it needs to be for us. We keep hearing, we all merged 4 departments in 5 years. That's gone. We need to move forward. We need to get this place going in a positive.
Anybody else? Comments, questions, sir?
I feel compelled. I want to respond to Captain Weinbaum real quick on the delay. Don't disagree with you at all. But I think this needs to be said as well. When we have these types of incidents, is the first thing we need to do is be able to talk together and from a hot wash to an after action in a reasonable amount of time. All right? We can't do these things when we have an incident such as this and the first call goes outside the organization. All right?
Was that-
as this incident evolved, and let's do an after action, the information didn't come up through the chain of command to talk about it. We started getting calls out to the state fire marshal's office and outside the organization. That doesn't help us try to facilitate and do these things in a timely manner.
How does that stop it? I don't understand.
Because-
everyone knew the fire happened, so I don't know.
That's right. And when those emotions are high, it was very quickly potentially turning into something that it didn't need to be. Like, who's going to be disciplined? Somebody over here said that. Who's going to be disciplined? That's not how we resolve these things, and that's not how we learn from these things. We need to do these things, like Chief Lowe is saying, and get together and be able to have some conversations, and then have a combined cooperation from all areas of the organization to work through them and limit or reduce the chances of those things happening again in the future. Now, what I will tell you is that in January, President Nelms, as soon as he got in office, came to me. We had a list of 3 or 4 things we wanted to talk about, and this was one of them. And he came to me and says, hey, give me some background. We talked about it a little bit, and within a couple of weeks, I think you were traveling, is the first thing I said, please, let's bring Tony in and let's sit down and have a personalized conversation, other than some other conversations that have happened before that. And President Nelms was very cooperative to try and help bring this to light and help get it out in the appropriate format like this, and not allow it to move forward as a headhunt or hunting expedition, that type of thing. And those things were out there. And I felt, as the fire chief, I don't want anybody in this organization, anybody, regardless of rank, color shirt you wear, that we go through an experience such as this and it turns into something that it should not be. And there were efforts out there, in my opinion, to do that. And that's not appropriate, how to do a proper after action and bring that to resolve. So I want to give President Nelms credit for coming to me. Well, we met and helping bring this to fruition, and getting Chief Elliott in here in a positive, constructive manner, so we could sit here and get our lessons learned.
At no point did I say anything about this.
Oh, no, I didn't say you did.
Okay,
No, no.
and as far as going outside the agency, every correspondence I've had with anybody.
I'm not.
No, I know you're not saying me,
Not
but
you at all.
what I'm saying is, I don't really care what other people did. If they called the news or whatever they did, that shouldn't stop the proper thinking. And it shouldn't take X months to do that.
Great. Yeah. Okay, good, that's it.
Anything else?
Yeah, let's say something.
Yeah.
I never had the
Come up front,
opportunity.
Tony, if you don't mind, just so we get you.
First of all, I want to say thank you.
Absolutely. Sure, proud to see you, man. Walking tall.
Thank you for all your time. And I thank everybody in this room. Because even though it was a minor thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's tough. I just don't know what else to say. I'm just thankful for everybody here.
Lesser people.
Yeah,
probably
I
wouldn't
did
be
not want
standing
to
here.
talk about it tonight, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it was hard for me in many ways. I lost my brother 4 months before that.
Right.
Just 2 streets over, same day of the week, same time.
Right.
So it was hard. My head might have not all been here. So I don't blame anybody in this room. Because the way I look at it, I want to go home at the end of the day, and just like I want everybody else safe.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think the safety committee, the chief, and everybody else.
Yeah. And I think the results are gonna be really, really good out of this. It was just a couple, 3 simple things that could be implemented, probably without a policy, right? Maybe just go back to fire school, go back to the basic incident command, go back and let somebody know what you're gonna do. I'm going in. No, you're not. Or, yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good.
Again, I thank everybody. Appreciate it.
Yeah, again, I'm so proud that you're standing up nice and tall.
Thanks, Tony.
Very
All right, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
We just need to be a little bit more proactive than reactive. like, you know, on top of the 3 things that you said we need to learn, I think we need to start thinking about what will happen, not what could happen, but what will happen eventually, if not it's done. We just gotta be a little bit more proactive. That's like the fire service and any other place is reactive. They always make policies and if someone's wrong.
Right.
Or they make rules or make structure. I think that's what Juan's looking for, a little more structure so that everybody has a little bit more, everyone works together in unison.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of the guys are just asking for.
Oh, yeah.
And
I
it happened
understand.
quicker because it's been 5 years.
I mean, I was the chief, and you can be policy to death, there's no doubt about that, but you get right down to it for a structure fire of that size, there's probably just a couple handful of things you really need. Things are going well, need IC, need accountability, hand off the tags, need really good communications, and it wouldn't take that much communications to make this come out differently. Agreed? Right? Things are going poorly, you hit the air horn, we're going defensive, stay outside, don't stay in the collapse zone, put the fire out, homeowner's happy because eventually the fire goes out, insurance company comes in and scrapes it, we all go home. We just put out 2 fires in
Chief.
15 minutes there. Yeah,
Chief, I think Chief Lowe said something to me not too long ago. He said, a lot of the pieces are there, sometimes we just need to practice more, which is different than training. The way you said it really resonated with me, is practice, we just need to practice. Make sure we're up on the policies and we're doing it the right way and just practice those steps.
right.
I thought that was very valuable.
Are we still recording? Are we done?
You know, I can be.
Yeah, we need it, yeah.